Welcome to the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal Stakeout guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from beautiful Vero Beach, Florida, the headquarters of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and Indian River Hauntings. If you're a little interested in hearing more about my teams and what we do, you can check us out at paranormalfbi.com and indianriverhauntings.com. You can also see our Facebook page, our YouTube page, at symbol Indian River Hauntings 2341. But more importantly, if you'd like to send me a message here on Paranormal Stakeout, just send me it at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org, and we'll be glad to talk about your question or your thoughts right here on the show. So if you get a chance, let us know what you think. Hope everybody's doing well. I've got a great guest tonight. One of the early pioneers in the modern era of paranormal investigation, Mr. Richard Sennett. Mr. Sennett has been investigating ghosts and the paranormal since 1978 when he saw a ghost monk at an old mission as part of an archaeological team doing some work there. Over the years, he has looked into haunted places in Nevada, Hawaii, England, and as well as his home state of California. He's a historian and writer and now resides near Ventura, California, where he is the historian for the city of Ventura. He's also authored about 22 books. One of his latest books is a Civil War book titled The Crypto History of the Civil War. A look at the paranormal side of the Civil War through folklore and legends. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. It lists all kinds of haunted places and on the ghost-ridden battlegrounds and buildings of the Civil War. He's always been fascinated with the Civil War, and in this particular book, he says if you want a list of battles and strategies, this is not the book for you. But if you want to find out about Bigfoot and the Civil War, lots of treasures, lost treasures, strange facts and weapons, ghosts and curses, this is the book for you. We've always talked a lot about the ghosts of Gettysburg, but we haven't talked much about Bigfoot involved in the Civil War. So with that, I'd like to welcome Richard Sennett to the show. Rich, welcome to Paranormal Stakeout.
Good, glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've chatted, and fascinating history. A lot of the work that you've done over the years, but some of my guests may not be familiar with you. So if you could just take a second to share with us a little bit of your background, how you became part of the paranormal research field, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I've always been interested in history, and during the summer of 1978, I was part of an archaeological team at the old mission here in California, San Antonio de Padua. And late one night, I was working in the laboratory by myself at that time, about 12:30 at night. And I walked out into the courtyard and saw a bit of flame, like a candle flame. And then, as I drew nearer, I saw it was a monk just with a candle in his hand. And that did not scare me because, monks still live there. It's a monastery. I figured, one of the brothers is up. Maybe we could chat. Well, I walked up to him, and wouldn't you know it, he disappeared just like that. He vanished out of nowhere. He didn't fade away. He didn't sparkle like Star Trek beaming up. He just wasn't there anymore. And I stood there with my mouth open. And it slowly dawned on me, you know what? This must be one of those ghosts they talk about. And that's what got me started. I had seen this for well over 2 minutes. It looked solid. It didn't look like any TV show image of a ghost. It was something that I can't even forget now. In fact, if I close my eyes, I can still see it as clearly as I could back in 1978. It's branded into my noggin. And that's what got me started. I wanted to find out if I was crazy or not. And the good news, if I'm crazy, so are lots of other people. Some of the greatest names in history have all seen ghosts.
Or something we certainly cannot explain. I agree. If we're all crazy, then half the world's got to be nuts. So I totally agree with you. You being a historian, I am absolutely fascinated. You've got a couple books. I believe you got another one out called Haunted Hacienda also, right?
Yeah, that's about the Olivas Adobe, where I had the good fortune to be the manager. So I was there late at night, early in the morning for 11 years. And as such, I wrote down every paranormal event that happened, from the smallest one to the largest one. And it was a deep study of this one particular site. And it gave a lot of interesting answers to what haunted houses are like. And I put together this compilation of all my research.
Now, and where's this located? California, I assume?
It's in Ventura, California.
Okay.
It was 1841 Adobe Hacienda of a large landowner, Raimundo Olivas, who owned a huge piece of land. Was an interesting man in and of himself, but the stories of ghosts started back about 1970 and evolved and continued to evolve. In fact, I'm planning to go out there tomorrow night looking for more evidence of ghosts.
Interesting. Your book that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, The Crypto History of the Civil War. I got to be honest with you. I think we may have talked about this before, but crypto history, cryptids in the Civil War. If you want to find out about Bigfoot in the Civil War, this is the book for you. Share that with us, please. Let's talk about Bigfoot.
Lots of interesting things happened during the Civil War. It's a fascinating study, one I've always been interested in. But the one that got me happened at Harper's Ferry, where it was occupied by the Union Army after Stonewall Jackson captured it and held it briefly, and then the Union took it over. They started to hear something, a huge man covered with hair, a Bigfoot. And it was seen by a number of Union soldiers, including a guard who saw that. He even contacted his superior officers, who thought he was drinking, by the way, and they followed gigantic footprints into the woods and managed to the officer wrote in his report about the sighting of what is a Bigfoot. But he was also seen at Arkansas by Confederate forces, as well as several times in and around Harper's Ferry. Not just that one incident, but several. One say he actually went into a barracks and broke the place up looking for food. So very interesting that we have this account of a Bigfoot creature, which, by the way, they didn't call Bigfoot. They called it a hairy man or a monster ape. They didn't know what to call it. But they had this experience, and it means that the Bigfoot creature has been around a lot longer than the 1950s or something like that. It really has a place in our American history.
Well, and that's a question I want to ask you. This is not a story that you often read in the history books or in tales of the Civil War. How did you find out about it? How were you able to even research?
There are all sorts of stuff on the internet. That's where I got this story from.
Mhm.
If you just have to dig for it. Now, one of the
Mhm.
things I pride myself on is my ability to do research. And I am pretty good as a historian, not just going through the direct front door of a
Mhm.
topic, but going through the back door, sometimes sneaking through the window. But you have to get inside where the accounts are to get the
Mhm.
first-hand accounts of what occurred long ago. Many of my research techniques I used in this particular book.
And that is such a vital thing in the world of paranormal research is proper historical research.
Yes,
When
I agree with you 100%.
well, none of this matters if you don't embrace history. None of this matters. So that's at least that's how I feel about it. But where were you able to find? I mean, this is a topic you just don't hear about, even in most paranormal circles. Bigfoot in the Civil War. Did you get these accounts from letters home from the soldiers,
Mhm.
actual battlefield reports? Where were you able to find this
Oh, I found this
documentation?
particular thing on a file in West Virginia,
Hmm.
and I managed to get that. And there was a letter that was posted. It's on the internet. This is not that hard to find,
Hmm.
but you got to
How
look for it.
how were you able to discern its veracity on the internet? Because there's a lot of and the reason I'm asking you this
Yeah.
is I want people to know how to do it. How do you separate the chaff from the wheat when it comes to looking at things on the internet? Because we all know stuff on the internet isn't always correct.
Questionable, right? I agree. If you could get several sources to
Hmm.
actually agree, that's a great helpful thing. Also,
Hmm.
when they don't actually measure up to the quote unquote official line, like on Bigfoot, there's an official
Hmm.
line of what Bigfoot is. I tend to think it's wrong, but that's just me. I tend to think that a Bigfoot is not an animal as we know it, but it actually is some other kind of critter, which is why we've never been able to find him or capture him or anything like that. It's not like a gorilla or animal of that kind. So when it doesn't obey the rules that are set down by the official jargon or the official opinion of what Bigfoot is, that means it's a little more, uh, in my opinion, proof. But remember, I could be wrong too. Just because I
Ah,
found a source, that doesn't mean somebody didn't sneak something in there. Can't
right.
happen.
Well, and I commend you for that because it's one thing that I talk about a lot is there are no complete experts in this field. Nobody knows all the answers. But I want to ask you, I'm actually going to delve into this a little bit later in our talk tonight. Are
Mhm.
you suggesting, am I hearing that you're suggesting that Bigfoot perhaps is a interdimensional type creature? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's possible. We don't know.
Okay.
Or, well, okay, well, if you'll go through the theories, of which there are many, one is it could be from other dimensions. It could be from somehow other times. Well, we do know that
Okay.
there were Bigfoot critters that existed long ago, 30 million years ago. Maybe there's like slips in time where we
Hmm.
see one of these critters or something like that. Could very well be that they are, rather than being uh,
Well,
ape
I got
like
to interrupt you
creatures.
right now, Rich. I got to interrupt you right now because we're about ready to take our
Yeah.
break. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Civil War when we get back because I want to hear more about that. But then
Okay.
we're going to work our way back into time slips dimensions and your theories on that. So folks, stay with us. We'll be back with my guest Richard Sennett right after these messages. And we're back with my guest tonight, Richard Sennett. So glad to have you with us tonight. Want to get back to the Civil War and Bigfoot because this is a fascinating topic for me. You mentioned near Harper's Ferry. You mentioned, I believe, near Arkansas, Confederate troops also saw something along these lines. How many other sightings have you become aware of during the Civil War?
Not many. There
Hmm.
are just a handful, but it
Hmm.
does indicate that there were such a phenomenon even back then. But think about Bigfoot. He behaves much like a ghost. People see him, and he's gone. He
Hmm.
disappears. The
Hmm.
footprints appear, then they stop mysteriously. It's not. It's like there's a great deal of similarity between Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings, and ghosts. One is a high readings with electromagnetic equipment. So you can
Mhm.
so there's some kind of a link going on
Okay.
between these kinds of phenomena.
Do we have, or do you have a theory as to what those links might be at this point?
Well, I have many theories. One is that it's some kind of, as you mentioned, interdimensional play, or it could have something to do with the element of time. Time, as we know it, is still a mystery. We can measure it, but what is its true nature? Well, we don't really know. It could be that things slip through time. So when we
Mhm.
see a ghost of a Civil War soldier, maybe we are not seeing a ghost at all, but simply looking through the fabric of time to when that person was actually there. Same could be true of Bigfoot. We might be slipping through millions of years to a time when such creatures did walk the earth. Maybe they
Mhm.
were even like us, as intelligent as we are, only they went a different direction. We went towards building cities and towns and communities. They may have gone into developing their mental capacity and become
Mhm.
far more advanced creatures. This is why we're
Mhm.
never going to find one, because they know before we even set out our search for Bigfoot, they know before we even get in a car to go look for them, and we'll never find them.
So you're actually suggesting that Bigfoot uh, intellectually is far ahead of us.
hmm Yeah, they may
Interesting.
see us kind of like their entertainment. We are something for them to laugh at. We might be
Mhm.
just sort of pathetic creatures that they can look down upon and maybe, well, we don't know. This is all speculation on my part.
Mhm.
And any number of theories is valid. I'm not saying I have all the answers. Be the last person to even suggest that. But the idea that Bigfoot is just a big animal like an ape walking through the woods, if that were the case, we would have caught one long before now.
Well, and that's a question a lot of folks have. Why haven't we seen one? All the drones that are flying through the air, all the people looking for them. Uh, Now, I have heard people say, "Why have we not even found the remains of one that has passed on?" But then I've heard the in the answer to that, we rarely find a bear carcass either in the
Yeah.
wild.
Or
So I
if they are advanced creatures, maybe they bury their dead in such ways that we can never find them.
But have we ever really received information, reports, or data of any kind showing that Bigfoot has this type of comprehension and ability to think that far?
I think that there's some evidence out there. One particular
Okay.
case, a man saw Bigfoot and he was a hunter. He had a Winchester rifle and he
Hmm.
saw the creature and he just started shooting it. He pulled the trigger, worked the lever, the shells ejected. He fired everything in his gun, which, by the way, had no effect on the Bigfoot creature. And when it vanished, retreated into the woods, he looked down on all the shells which he had fired were on the ground in front of him unfired. He had somehow or other believed he had shot Bigfoot, but he was just ejecting the bullets out of his gun, which means that the Bigfoot may have telepathically managed to cause the fellow to think he had shot Bigfoot. But in fact, all he was doing was ejecting the bullets on the ground. If they have that kind of advanced telepathic mental abilities, we're never going to find one. Unless we get one that's very sick or very young, that hasn't developed its mental skills yet. But if they are advanced creatures, some have even suggested they're linked to UFOs, that there are UFO sightings where they're Bigfoot.
And I've heard that. What is your belief that the connection is? How do you
I
see it?
don't know. I wish I did. I do know this. I wrote a book called Ghost Dogs of California. And I
Hmm.
did find that there is a particularly large supernatural dog called a hellhound. Big
Okay,
giant. They've
heard
been
of it.
around since the Middle Ages. That's where the name comes from. And wherever there are hellhounds, there are Bigfoot around. So it's like I noticed this correlation. Why is this one particular phantom dog, this fierce creature with glowing red eyes, huge giant images, linked to Bigfoot? What are they? Has Bigfoot domesticated them somehow? Who knows? But we do know when you see a hellhound, you'll certainly see a Bigfoot close by.
Interesting. I've not heard that one. Now, these creatures, I guess I'm a little. I never looked at Bigfoot as being something that is that sophisticated. Where you don't have a thought of how they're connected with UFOs at all, though. That's.
But we do know that there are readings where people have seen Bigfoot. They get the same kind of electronic readings as they do at landing sites of UFOs. So if this is there, what causes that? We don't know. There are also many sightings of UFOs with an image of Bigfoot. Some even believe that Bigfoot is in fact a UFO pilot, kind of like a Wookiee, I suppose. And
it's the first thought I had, yeah. Interesting. So keeping this in mind, and you're best known for your work with ghosts, spirits.
Yeah, that's my specialty.
What do you think a ghost is?
That's the biggest rub of them all. We don't know. No one knows.
We don't know.
And if people say they know what a ghost is, run the other way. Nobody knows what ghosts are. No one. But they are a phenomenon. People get these images. Now, a few appear to be ghosts of the formerly living, the dead. But that's only a small percentage, a tiny percent, really, of grandma appearing. Yeah, they happen, but very rare. So most of the sightings are just incremental little glimpses of the past. I believe that ghosts are linked to time in some fashion. When we look at the image, which comes and goes very briefly, ghost sightings are about 5 seconds long. Seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're gone. You don't have time to be scared. You don't have time to take a picture, to do anything. They're just there and they're gone. Now, there's some occasions, rare, they'll last a little longer. Most of the sightings I've researched are short. Now, what are they? Are they glimpses into the past? Are they glimpses into other dimensions? That's a possibility, too. It could very well be that there are many worlds that we're in, a multi-dimensional universe.
Multiverse, yeah.
Yeah, multiverse. And I'm getting more and more enamored with that theory. It could be that in the dimension over there, the Civil War is still being fought. Or the dimension over there, World War II is still being fought. Or maybe weirder still, way over there, Hitler won World War II. And that would be a strange, bizarre world that he might have created. We don't know. We are left with this multiverse. And in each of these universes, there are duplicates of us. That's the theory. Just like us. There's a me in this other dimension talking to a you. Only that particular one, I'm wearing a blue shirt instead of a black shirt. And the slight differences. Anyway, that's the theory.
I think if there were two of me, I'm sure that would violate some law of science. I don't think they'd allow two of me.
You never know. You might be a better you or a worse you. We don't know.
And I've heard many discussions amongst folks in the scientific community, people that study and teach and lecture on quantum mechanics, quantum physics, talk about similar things. I believe you even have a story, and if I've got this wrong, let me know. But it's about a young lady that drove by a house, and she recognized it. I don't know if this is. I think
that's
this
an
is
old story.
Yeah, but I think it's fascinating, and it also kind of hits into this time slip thing. Can you? We got about a couple minutes before our break. Can you relate that story real quick?
Well, there's different ones. I don't know which exactly.
Well, this is one where she actually stopped the cab, and ran up to the door, knocked on the door, and the people in the house recognized her.
Yeah, this is one. It took place in Connecticut, which if you've ever driven through Connecticut, they've got no street signs. They're just it's a mess to try to drive around that place. She was going to visit friends up there, drove up, couldn't find her way through the maze of streets without signs, and saw this beautiful mansion with all these cars parked in front of it. So she stopped and went into the door, and a butler answered, and she asked directions. How do I get to this road? And he said, go down there. She didn't like his attitude. So she decided to tip him. So she pulled out of her purse and put out a 50 cents and gave it to him. And then as a tip to show that she's superior, went back to her friends. And then she got to her destination and told her story to her friends. And they said, oh, you're talking about the old Crothers house that burned down 5 years ago. And then she drove her car there, walked up to the burned remains. Just a stoop was there, and there on the stoop, of course, was 2 quarters or 50 cents that she had left for the butler. Anyway, it's a great yarn. How true it is, I don't know, but many stories are like that.
And that gives credence to the dimensional time slip. But I always have an issue when folks say that they saw grandma just before she passed and she left them a message saying, I'm going to be fine. Don't worry about me. That indicates something moving on and not necessarily
I have
dimension.
gotten that same story dozens of times.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very common. And they always get the same message. That's what's so odd. The message is everything's all right. Everything is the way it should be. I'm going to be all right.
All right.
That's it. They don't talk about heaven. They don't talk about hell.
I'm going to be
just
fine.
Say, I'm all right. I
got to take our break right now. So hold that thought. We'll be back right after these messages, folks, with my guest tonight, Richard Sennett. And welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Richard Sennett. Fascinating stories, and it really makes you open your mind and try to think at many different levels. You made a comment that I saw about most ghosts being female.
That's true.
What's your theory on that?
It may have something to do with emotions. Many ghosts are simply bundles of emotion more than anything else. It could be that, but that's just speculation. We don't know. I do know that up to 2/3 of all ghosts seen are women, not men. And why that's the case, I certainly don't know. I can speculate, though, that it has something to do with an emotional desire to stay in a place, to oversee family, loved ones, to hang around the same reason you might hang around. Because you loved someone, you cared about them, you want to make sure they're okay, stuff like that.
And that kind of goes along with the theory that we really don't know, because that thought, and I don't disagree with your line of thinking, but that goes against the dimensional time slip argument almost, because you're saying that the emotional energy from a woman is enough to keep her spirit here, or her essence here, her energy here. So that kind of flies in the face of the dimensional thing.
Well, I have discovered there isn't one theory. There's probably
Amen to that.
several. It's not like there's one overall. I kept looking for that, like a holy grail, to try to find out what is the one little theory that accounts for everything. I've never been able to find it. It could be that there are several things, or it could be emotions might somehow breach the bonds of the dimensions, make some sort of link. I don't know. But there's much we don't know. And that's what's so sad, is very few people are actually doing the research. They're out making little TV shows, making a lot of money, writing books, but they're not actually trying to answer questions of what this is all about.
And that is also, I think, a big issue. I think there's a place for folks that want to enjoy it. I guess the analogy I use, would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? I wouldn't, but there are many people that will, because it's a thrill. Is paranormal investigation any different? There are people that are going to do it for the thrill. Okay, fine. But there's also got to be folks out there that are trying to find the answers. How do we do that, Richard? How are we going to get at least part of the folks that do this uh, centered on finding the answers?
Well, I believe we need to fund research in the universities. I know we had at one time paranormal laboratories all over, but they were little, one by one, shut down. There are people who are against them, don't believe that there's anything valid to be learned, even though we have learned a lot of great things through their studies. But these laboratories, which one time led the way in discovering the truth about ESP, for instance, thought transference, dogs and their links mentally to their masters, things like this, they've been shut down. Now, all we're left with is, Zach Bagans and ghost hunting TV shows that are there to make an entertaining TV show, to play upon the thrill of it. And there is a thrill. I can't deny that. There's nothing more exhilarating than to be in a haunted house and to have you and the entity that's there. And all you've got is a flashlight that's running out of energy, that's being drained of power, and it's flickering on and off. And that is, you can't get anything like it.
Agreed. And you mentioned brains, the power of the brain earlier. I think there's a lot of scientists that are now starting to try and get a handle on not only the dimensional issues that we discussed, but also the power of the human brain. What is the human brain capable of? What is consciousness? Now, you'd mentioned dogs a couple of seconds ago. Animals are an interesting key. Do you believe animals have souls?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe
and
they have been seen after death, behave like ghosts. Many times they're linked to their masters, even though their master may be 1,000 miles away. The master's in trouble, they'll start to panic, as happened with the dog owned by Lord Carnarvon. When he died in Cairo, his dog threw up a fit in England. So these timings happen. It indicates that there's some sort of telepathic link between the master and the animal.
But in some level, is it possible there's also a greater intelligence? I mean, look at animals now. The gorilla is known to possess great intelligence. Dolphins, dogs and cats even. We can't see the other side, but how many times have you heard stories of a dog or a cat, but we'll pick a dog for this, just suddenly staring into a corner? I've got a personal story myself where my brother's dogs actually became excited and started howling and scratching at the door that contained my father's personal items right after he passed away. So is it even possible that dogs, even though we look at us being superior to anything that's on four legs, might actually possess more brain power than we do, more abilities than we do?
Think about this: birds like ravens are very bright critters, and their brains are tiny, tiny little peas compared to our own. But they still are able to solve problems, do things, remember people, remember places, which seems to be beyond their capacity. So I believe in mental ability, a lot of what we consider dumb animals really aren't that dumb.
No, and it begs the question, is there a connection between all of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of connections. And
now,
yes.
No, there are so many different directions we can go with not only the soul, spirits, how they return. Is it dimensional? Is it time slips? This also opens the door, Richard, to a lot of people that want to use this, just having enough information to know that something's out there, to take advantage of others. I'm talking about folks that are frauds in our business, in our world.
Too many of them.
What have you experienced?
I have seen things that make you cry, especially fraudulent psychics. One lady, just one story, turned to a woman and said, I feel, she's a psychic. She got into this woman's head. She trusted him. The psychic said, I see you have cancer. And if you don't pay me $5,000 to cure you, you're going to die an awful, terrible death. And so what did the lady do? Why, she paid her $5,000 and then turned around. And then the lady did a little ritual. Oh, your cancer is gone. She went to the doctor. Guess what? She didn't have any cancer because she never did in the first place.
Yeah.
So many things like that. I have to actually go behind and cure some of the fraudulent nonsense that some people have spread to gullible folks. And there's a desire to wish to believe, and that gives these people unscrupulous power.
Well, and for starters, generally speaking, as far as paranormal researchers or investigators, if you will, if they want to charge you money for investigating their residence, you run as fast as you can away from them.
I agree with that. I never charge when I go out to places.
Right.
And I will publish books and do tours, but I never charge for any investigations.
And there are certain, for lack of a better term, cultures that do have a history behind taking advantage of folks in their time of need. But one of the things that really worries me, and this comes into the realm of the investigator, we'll call it that, going into a home where somebody is purporting to have problems, not doing their due diligence to find out if there's any issues in the home, such as a mental illness, addiction, that type of thing, claiming that something is going on there, and then waving a little bit of sage or something around afterwards and saying the problem is solved, and it's not. And what kind of harm do you think that does to folks that maybe are suffering and they don't realize what they're suffering from, and it's not paranormal, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so many of these cases are, in fact, not paranormal. One guy came to me, he said he had these demons bothering him, tickling him at night, poking him. I actually had a psychic go out to his house. What did she feel? Nothing. So I told him, go to the doctor and see what's wrong. Have a physical. Oh, I said, I'm not crazy. I said, I didn't say you were crazy. I said, just go and have a checkup. You can't be. Tell him what you're experiencing. Well, you know what? He took my advice, and he found out that they did test. He had a brain tumor, and they actually removed it, and all the ghosts vanished away. They were all essentially, quite literally, in his head, and caused by this brain tumor putting pressure on his brain.
And that's why it's so important that people that decide they want to do this, if they're trying to be serious about doing it and finding answers and helping people, they need to do their due diligence, and they need to know what they're talking about and not promise they can do things that they cannot. Now, how do we police ourselves? I ask many of my guests this question.
That's a good question.
How do we police this?
There's no overarching force. There's no overarching group that polices them. It's like the Wild West. You take your chances. In the Wild West, you could go to a dentist. He might be a good guy, but he might be Doc Holliday too, and shoot you. But you don't know. He was a pretty good dentist from all I've read. But you're up on your own. The best thing I could advise you to do is go through word of mouth. If anybody is a fraud out there, they can't hide it too long, and eventually they'll be found out. But sadly, gosh, there's so many crooks out there, so many unethical people. Now, a lot of the people, in all honesty, are nothing more than unlicensed psychologists. People go to them and they get a reading. And most of the time, the readings are much like a psychiatric meeting. He probably doesn't do any harm, maybe even does some good at a lower price than a psychologist would offer. So I've seen things like that, and I don't object to that kind of stuff. When people are openly threatening, saying you've got cancer, I can cure it.
Run from that as quickly as you can.
And the same is true. Some guy there was a guy doing de-haunting of houses, and he had a little pyramid he put on his head.
Let's hold that because we got to go to our last break, and I want to hear this story. So stay tuned, folks. We'll hear about the guy with the thing on his head in haunted houses right after these messages. We are back on our final segment for tonight's show with my guest, Richard Sennett. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about my crew down here in Florida, check us out at paranormalfbi.com, as well as indianriverhauntings.com. You can also catch us on Facebook at Indian River Hauntings or Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation. Our YouTube channel is at sign Indian River Hauntings 2341. Don't forget, you can also email me at ghostsky@paranormalstakeout.org or see all of my past shows at paranormalstakeout.org. But I would be remiss if I did not suggest and encourage you to listen to all the other great shows and programming on the X Zone Broadcast Network by going to xzbn.net. So please do that. Now, Richard, before we get into the guy with the thing on his head, I want to tell folks how they can find out about you, how they can contact you, and a little bit about your books that are coming out.
Okay, I have a number of books. You can see them on Amazon.com on my bookshelf page. And I have the Civil War book. I have another one on haunted landmarks here in California. A number of other books I've written, including Ghost Dogs of California. I did a study on that. I have fun. I enjoy writing. It's like a form of therapy for me, I guess. Who knows? But they can reach me that way or on Facebook. I have a page called Richard Sennett Ghost Hunter, and I list all the various sites I've gone to. And there is a page with me called richardsennett.com, which also has some of the things I'm up to.
So check him out, folks, and see all the things that are going on in California. And this Bigfoot in the Civil War, I'm going to look more into that because that's got me absolutely fascinated. So getting back to the story before the break. So you had a guy that went to a haunted house or went to a haunted house.
He would do this to people. You have a haunted house, you pay him $500, $500. And he had a little outfit he put on with mystical symbols on it and a pyramid he'd put on his head. And he'd go into the house and spend the whole night there. And then after he was done, he'd say, your house is no longer haunted. Here's my $500, you know. And then the people would call me up and say, oh, he came and he went and I paid him, but it's still haunted. I'm still I kept saying, no, that's not how you do it. You can't de-haunt a place with putting a pyramid on your head or doing any ritual. You'd be better off going to a priest and having him bless the house. That might actually work better.
And I actually do believe there are folks with the ability to help things transition or maybe calm things down. But those are not the people that you're going to see asking for money to do it. These are the folks.
They do it on their own. A lot of rescue circles. These are psychic mediums. And I don't often agree with what they do, but many times they have really helped people who have a problem in their house. They do a session. I've been to a few. They tend to be cry fest. Everyone starts crying and, we'll go toward the light. All this stuff. It's really quite emotional. It's a great show. And sometimes it seems to work. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Well, keep an open mind, but always be wary. Keep your eyes open. Don't take it. Now, we've spent some time talking about folks that are trying to fleece others in this field, but there's also some dangers in all of this too, isn't there? I mean, the real dangers that folks delving into this field or this area of study can be faced with. Your thoughts?
Very much. When I first got involved in it back in the 70s and 80s, I thought, nothing can harm me. There's nothing evil. It's all just like smoke. It can't harm you. Then I came against, after 9 years doing it, by the way, I came against real evil. And then I went, I was wrong. There really is bad stuff out there. all ghosts are not Casper the Friendly Ghost. So evil exists, but it's very rare. In fact, in many ways, the ghost world is a mirror of the real world. Just as there are very few evil people, there are some. I'm sure you've met some in
Oh,
your
please.
career.
Yeah, there's lots of evil people out there.
And but what most people see as evil is simply selfishness. They're too involved in themselves to see the harm they're doing to others, the pain and suffering. But true evil, there are very few. But unfortunately, it does exist. When you have that experience, I've talked to so many ghost hunters. Many, by the way, stop being ghost hunters and become born again Christians and become incredibly religious and almost fanatically so,
Mhm.
never wanting to touch the paranormal. But evil does exist, and you can't. I know of a half a dozen ghost hunters who have lost their lives in ghost hunting. Sometimes they've fallen through buildings,
Mhm.
accidents. Other times,
Yeah.
one was killed investigating a haunted trellis. He was on this bridge. A train came along and hit him. A real train, not a ghost train. So there
Well,
are real dangers.
you've talked about confronting evil yourself. Can you give us an example of something you faced?
It was a particular evil person who had murdered several folks in life and had contributed to the death of another person in Santa Barbara, uh, where I was asked to investigate. Oh, by the way, the people who asked me never told me about all this negative stuff. They kept that quiet till I got up there and had to dig it out. And then when I saw the phantom come, it was black, just totally blacker than a black room. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like a hole in space rather than an actual image that was black. And it was evil and cold. And I never want to go through that again. Oh, by the way, what was my advice? I told the family to leave. I said,
Mhm.
just move out. That's it. I can't help you anymore. And they did. Now, I followed up. I went back to the new people who moved in. They had no problems whatsoever. No ghosts. So whatever it is, something broke it free. I don't know what, but there are evil things. You don't mess with it. I
Are
guarantee.
they? Do you believe in demons? Do you think they're demons? Because that's a lot of
That's
people
what
like to make that claim, but
uh, personally, I do not believe in a devil or demons per se. I think that's more folklore than fact. But I do think evil exists.
oh,
Evil
I
can
guarantee you that.
attach itself to someone, and they can become like a demon in life as well as death. So I do
Ah,
believe evil it does exist. I just don't believe that it's a guy with little horns and a tail and stuff like that.
well, there's theories out there that what you are in life, it just one of the many theories of what it is we deal with spirits, ghosts, apparitions,
Mhm.
is that what you were in life is what you are in the afterlife. And
That's a theory.
I'm here to tell you the things that I've seen people do to other people is evil incarnate, and I can actually see that that theory being reality is because there's just some unbelievable evil out there. So
Very
where are
true.
we going? We've talked
That's an
about a lot of
interesting.
things. Yeah, and so many. We've talked about dimensions. We've talked about evil. We've talked about the power of the brain. We've talked about not really knowing what this is. So what's the future? Where do we go from here, Richard?
I believe that they are making great breakthroughs, especially in other countries, not here in the United States, but in Brazil, for instance, in Europe, and parts of Asia. People are making some fundamental discoveries. I think what we
Such
need to
as,
do share our data. And by sharing it,
uh,
we can
yes.
actually gain new insights to whatever the stuff is. It's far more complicated than just demons, ghosts, or spirits. It's far more, uh, has to do with more of the nature of reality itself.
Hmm.
So, so I tend to think the great discoveries are being made, but they're not being shared. This is not a time where people are open to sharing new ideas.
Why?
I don't know why. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's greed. Maybe it's our particular era you live in. But I do know this is not the 1980s. This is not the 90s even. It is an era where we think that an electronic gizmo will solve all of our problems. Or a pill. Take a pill, all your mental problems are solved. No, it isn't. All you've done is mask it. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
interrupt you. I think we need to reestablish the paranormal laboratories. We need to get these various institutions more involved in this kind of work so that we can delve into the reality behind ghosts and hauntings and other bizarre phenomena.
How about investigators, researchers coming under some kind of umbrella that allows people to share data?
Right, very much.
And break down whether it's money, egos, whatever. That's what we have to do. How do you see AI playing into all this? That's the big thing now.
I think it might actually be an answer. Maybe they will be able to get past the ego structures that we have in place. What I've seen in today's paranormal world is almost a balkanization. Everyone has their own little group in their own little area and territory. You don't want to share because it's my data, not your. You get your own data. You stay in your territory. And none of this is going to help paranormal research. Oh, it's great for the pocketbook, but it's not so good if you're talking about getting answers. I don't think a lot of people want to know the truth. I think they're much happier with their folklore that they've accepted. They get one book, one set of terminology, everything's just fine, but they don't want to take the next step, answers.
Well, in is one of those steps the ability to create a structure of investigation so that people are doing the same thing?
Very much.
And folks love to take that out of context, saying there's only one way to investigate. That's not what I'm saying. But if everybody at least adheres to a structure, they collect evidence the same way, they preserve evidence the same way, and then they share it, there's going to be commonality to that evidence. Because if you get an EVP doing this, but you get an EVP doing a totally different way, you've got really no way to compare which one's correct. So that's a big issue with me.
It's very important that you have sharing of data. Now, I believe there are many roads to the truth. I don't think that there's one particular path. So I've talked to psychics, I've talked to pendulum twisters, I'm talking to all the people out there, and they've gotten answers as valid as the people with equipment. So what's going on with here? So
and that's unfortunately a question that at this point is going to remain unanswered, but I'm afraid, my friend, our time tonight has come to an end. So we could go on for hours, I'm sure, just delving into the different areas, and I hope we can do that again sometime. But I want to thank you, Richard, for being on the show tonight. And I want to thank all of you folks for being with us here tonight on Paranormal Stakeout. Remember, as the day goes on, love your family, hug your kids, and we'll see you on the other side. Have a good night, folks.